Hello and welcome back to the Faith and Culture Show. I'm Catherine Camp, your hostess for the show. This is where we try to do our best to educate ourselves, not only on theology or philosophy or logic, but we want to know what's going on in our culture. That's the way that we can have these conversations in our culture, conversations that count, educated conversations. We want to have conversations with an eternal perspective. Today, I have someone that I have never had on before, and I'm delighted to introduce her to you. Her name is Ashley Miller. She is passionate. She's a passionate advocate in the fight against human trafficking, driven by her devotion to the Lord and her own journey of grace that fuels her deep love and compassion for the most vulnerable in society. Her fervent desire to see America realign itself with God's values inspires her dedication to combating human trafficking and protecting those at risk. She specializes in prevention initiatives. Ashley collaborates tirelessly alongside individuals and organizations to raise awareness, provide education, and implement training programs aimed at thwarting human trafficking before it can ensnare its victims. With a heart rooted in faith and a commitment to serving others, Ashley channels her passion and empathetic compassion to making a difference in the fight to eradicate human trafficking from the face of the planet. Having earned a bachelor's degree in molecular biology from Grove City College, Ashley furthered her education at Drexel University in Philadelphia, obtaining her graduate degree to become a physician assistant. Her dual focus on preventative measures and post-trafficking survivor, holistic, consistent, and long-term care underscores her unwavering commitment to amplifying the voices of the silenced and advocating for those impacted by today's modern-day slavery. And we know so much of this is going on today, especially with the over 320,000 children that are missing in the last 3 years with this open borders policy. Ashley's advocacy roots trace back to her early involvement working with children and teenagers as a volunteer in the medical field and later as a pediatric physician assistant. These experiences exposed her to the devastating effects of neglect, abuse, trauma, and trafficking on vulnerable youth, instilling in her a determination to provide ongoing care and support to those in need. Believing wholeheartedly in the transformative work and grace of God, the power of authentic connections, and courage to take decisive action, it is possible to confront pressing issues with empathy and resolve, catalyzing change through compassion and unwavering dedication. I am so excited to have her talk with us about her work and how we can get involved as Christians. Welcome to the Faith and Culture Show, Ashley. Thank you so much. I can't believe we're actually talking again.
I'm so excited.
It's been a while.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. And it's such a pleasure to be here with you, Catherine. And the work you're doing is just so powerful. It's an honor to be here. And I guess without further ado, that introduction was quite wonderful. But I'll give some background of like currently the work I'm doing. I work with the
Yes.
Wolf Group, which is Bill Wolf is a leading expert and national and international leading expert in combating human trafficking. He worked over 15 years law enforcement, went on to create a task force in Virginia when he realized that human trafficking was taking place in middle to upper class families, and then went on to go into the DOJ, the FBI, and became the chief policy advisor under Trump's administration to combat human trafficking across the nation. And so what the work we do is basically we're in a supportive role. We seek to help the human trafficking organizations that are doing the rescuing, the survivor care, the prevention. And indeed, that's my passion, is that prevention. Yes, to stop human trafficking before it starts. Because as we know, as Benjamin Franklin said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of the cure. So, but I guess I started to work with Bill. I was the director of outreach with a nonprofit, and then later came and joined his business, and just really have found such a reward working in this supportive role where we were able to create policy, we're able to address these social issues, we're able to support nonprofits to enable them to accomplish their goals in really serving those who are impacted by this diabolical evil. So I guess I'll kind of go into like what human trafficking is exactly. So human trafficking, the definition is compelling a person to engage in commercial sex or forced labor against their will for profit. And oftentimes they do that through three measures: through force, fraud, or coercion. But to look at the whole picture of human trafficking, it is the second largest criminal enterprise in the world. Second to drugs, simply because a person can be used over and over and over again, and it still only counts as one criminal act. Think about that. If a person was used 15 times, it still counts as one. So we know that it is definitely the leading criminal enterprise. It is also a $150 billion industry. And today we have over 50 million slaves, more than the history of the world. Let that sink in. More than 50 million slaves. And according to a study done by Florida Services, they found that of those 50 million slaves, 50% of them are under the age of 18. So these are our kids. These are our kids. And part of that study showed that 90% of those kids are going to school and coming home every single day. And you say, how can that happen? Well, these traffickers, they're smart. They prey upon these victims in a very, very decisive way. They don't use force, because that, they realize, creates physical evidence that can be used in courts to basically prosecute them. So they're very, very conniving, and they use fraud and coercion to give these kids what they're longing for. We think about, how are they getting to our kids? How many of you have one of these? How many of your kids have one of these?
Yeah.
We talk about kind of in our parent coalition of parents, like, at what age would you put your child behind the wheel? Same idea of what age would you allow your child to access the internet? And so these traffickers access our kids and they manipulate them. It's a psychological manipulation, and it goes into trust, and it violates their sense of love, their identity, and just who they are. And as a church, I just feel so privileged to be talking to you about the faith and culture, because ultimately this might be a social issue, but it is a spiritual issue. And if we don't recognize that we have to engage in this will not end. And so at the core of this, it strikes at the very identity of who we are in Christ. It strikes at that identity to say what true love is, trust is, of what love and what connection and what relationships look like. And so we as a church need to engage. And the one reason why trafficking is continuing to just abound is simply because we are not talking about it. So you might ask, what's the common, I guess you say, demographic of a buyer.
Yeah.
And as Christians, this is kind of going to be surprising and convicting. Is it is 35 to 45-year-old males who are married with children and go to church every Sunday.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Why don't more churches bring this up? I know there are some, and they're really good about it. They have their own ministries, they raise awareness about it, but many churches, they're just not talking about it, and it's a huge problem.
It is, and I think it's because one of the, and I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up, and I don't want to focus on it too much, but it's pornography. Today our kids are being exposed. The age that a lot of kids are seeing pornography is 9 years old. That's when they start viewing this.
Wow.
And it's a romanticized, Hollywoodized idea of deviant, sex. And I think that we as the church just don't rise up and talk about those tough issues. But that is at the root of a lot of this human trafficking. So, and that's part of what traffickers look for when they're looking at victims: accessibility, suggestibility, and vulnerability. And accessibility is that internet. And so pornography is abundant. And today we actually 40% of pornography is viewed by women. It's not just men. But it creates this idea. It's like when you view pornography, it's like taking heroin. It releases that dopamine of just addiction. And so once they see that, they're like, it's not enough to just view it anymore. They have to reenact it. They have to create whatever is internal. They have to create, externally. And unfortunately, that deviant behavior that is absolutely just made up and fake, they can't get that in the sanctity of a marriage. So they go outside of the marriage.
Wow. That's shocking. I know about the how our brain works and how powerful the chemicals that are, they come about with any sexual expressions viewed, or when you participate in them, they even get stronger.
Yeah.
But this is why a lot of these children who, I don't know whether they're just not getting enough attention at home or they've been sexually abused at home, but they end up in the camp of people who, the kids who end up with sexually diverse issues because they get very confused. And this does happen because this is something God meant for one man and one woman in the bonds of marriage, for things to be wonderful and have fun, but it's being abused. And when it's abused, then it becomes dangerous to people.
Yeah. And I love that you brought that up. One, the church is not providing the community and the support for these kids. They might not have families that are intact. And we look at the vulnerabilities, right? Like single family homes. Right now we have a crisis. There are no fathers in the home. We do not have fathers. And that is a crisis that is affecting our children because they don't know how to value, respect women. They don't know what true love looks like. And we as a church need to surround these kids and provide that with community, because in community, when you believe that you belong, you can become who you're meant to be. And that happens in community. And so the vulnerabilities that these traffickers prey upon is they're so digitally connected, but not emotionally connected. So they find that community, they find that belonging, they find that love. And like you said about just, we're looking at different ways to try and find our identity. And, a lot of churches, or some churches, I'll just say it, I'm sorry to offend, but it's the truth. We want to embrace the LGBTQ community and transgenderism. And unfortunately, that is the very act of the enemy. He was made the most beautiful angel. And so what he envies the most is that we were created in the image of God. And so he goes after that identity. He goes straight after the core of who we think we are. And that confusion is what he attacks. And actually the LGBTQ community, transgenderism, because of that confusion, they are some of the most vulnerable individuals to human trafficking. 60% of that community are preyed upon because they're so insecure. They so want to be loved. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Ashley, do you know the statistics? I don't have them, and I used to know what the statistics are for children who are sexually abused in the home, either by family members or babysitters.
Sexual abuse, no.
Okay.
Familial trafficking, I will tell you, is 80% of human trafficking. 80 to
What?
90% is familial trafficking. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've heard that, and I know of one pastor who I've interviewed who was trafficked as a
Mm.
child and abused, and then made to participate in satanic ritual abuse, which
Mhm.
honestly I did not think was real. I'd never even heard of those terms put together,
Yeah.
um, which include murdering someone who's close to you. I mean, it's horrific.
Yeah.
So you're right. This is a major spiritual war.
Mhm.
Okay, so what else can you tell us about the Wolf Group, or maybe your journey to decide to be a partner in this organization? Did you start it with Mr. Wolf, or how did it work?
No, I definitely did not start it.
Okay.
I was actually in a community organization that seeks to just serve our community, and we were doing an outreach during COVID 2021. And we were like, we can't give food, we can't, donate clothes. So what can we do? And I was working with a partner as co-chair, and we basically were like, hey, there's this guy who does human trafficking. Why don't we bring him in and we'll raise money to support his organization? And um, I my past has been mired in this, and I will tell you, I did not wake up and go, I want to combat human trafficking. Like I want
Right.
to do that. But I will say that the Lord gave me 2 verses in my life, and it was, "You shall see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living." So if things are not good, you can't die. That's Psalm 27:13. And the other verse was Isaiah 61:7, which says, "For your redemption you shall receive double for all of your trouble, and your inheritance will be that your latter days will outshine your former days." And I just, from what I went through as a live survivor, I just said, God, do not mock me. Do not mock that pain. I don't know how in the world you could ever redeem that. I've lost everything, absolutely everything. I lost my career as a physician assistant. Um, and just completely, it destroyed my body. As they say, your body holds on to what your mind tries to forget. And that trauma nearly destroyed me and killed me. So when we brought in Bill and he was talking about prevention, I just heard the Lord say with Isaiah 61:7, your redemption is in prevention. And all I did was reach out and say, how can I help?
Wow.
And that's how I got connected. And, I think sometimes when you just say yes to God,
Mm.
and one of the things that I was learning just in my Bible study was just that, when God created you, he created a good work and then he created you. But sometimes we don't know what that good work is. Excuse me. So sometimes God says, invest in someone else's good work, help them succeed, and maybe you'll discover what you were created for. And that's
Wow.
really how it came about. And, went from the nonprofit world, and then Bill asked me to join his group this past year. So that's where I got.
That's amazing. And I think that gives a lot of hope to people who don't know where to step in. And I
Mm.
think God used your passion for caring for people with being a physician's assistant. You also were interested in the human biology. It was human biology, right? Because it could
Yes.
have been animal. I mean, that's okay. A lot of top vaccinologists in the world are veterinarians. They
Mhm.
know a lot about parasites and such. So I can see where things would flow over because biology is biology.
Mhm.
So he used it, and that is the whole purpose of this show, is to find people's passion and then just get involved in that passion. There's you said also that um, you support this, the Wolf Group supports or helps, goes alongside different groups or ministries that are now that to help them, I guess, to improve on what they're doing or to grow? How does that work? Say there's because I've interviewed a couple ministries out there on human trafficking. They have safe houses, and they help these individuals get back on their feet, learn how to write a resume, and so on and so forth. Tell me how the Wolf Group works.
Well, Bill, I mean, he has started nonprofits and built things from bottom up. So really it's empowering these organizations to get grants, to put together a team, to put together a board, to get the leaders, to really just give them that strategic plan to say, let's make your vision a reality. Let's actualize everything that you're thinking about and make it into a reality. A lot of people come in with great visions. They have these great ideas. So we kind of say, let's work with that. Let's make it happen. And that's the collaboration that we do is basically making people's passions and making their, whatever their agenda and their goal is. And we say, let's make it a reality. So that's how we kind of come in. And whether it's survivor prevention, rescuing and things of that nature, or policy making, we say, okay, like, let's break it down. We come up with proposals and we set it up and we just meet with them until it happens. So that's
Wow.
kind of what we do.
That's really awesome, because there was one organization, and I can't remember the name. I want to say Covington House, but that maybe that's not right. So does that sound familiar in North Carolina?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about her the other day, literally, because she was about to close her doors, and she had really done a good job of going to the state, trying to get some things passed so that they could get funding, because this is very expensive.
Oh, yeah.
When you want to set out to have, a human trafficking safe house, it takes a team of several different, you want professionals, you have to go through and check people out. They have to go through security checks, because these people have already been through enough as it is, that the victims. So it sounds like that's something that the Wolf Group helps with.
Yeah. And to be honest, the cost of helping a survivor to get back on their feet is equivalent to 10 domestic violence victims. And I'll say for me, they say $3.5 million to help a survivor just get back onto a menial level of just existing and not going back to, the trafficking. Because and I will say that less than 1% are ever identified for being human trafficked. It's literally leaving the 99 to find the one. And
Wow.
less than 0.4% ever self-identify. And when you meet with these survivors, they did not know that they were being trafficked. Sometimes when you bring them out of it, they're like resentful and saying, hey, you took me away from the love, the belonging, the place that gave me a sense of, self or whatever it is. And they're confused, and they don't even realize what they were engaged in and what they were trapped in. So it's very profound to, encounter this and to see that, so it's very costly with, these recovery. It takes money. Like you said, it has to be professionals, and it takes long term. You can't just put them in put them into an acute recovery, which is oftentimes what our government does. Mm-hmm. They provide that quick rescue, quick recovery, get them stable, but then they send them out. And that's when they're most vulnerable. They're most vulnerable to say, I'm going back to what I know. It's a wet blanket. It doesn't keep me warm. It doesn't keep me safe, but it's familiar. And that's part of the church's thing, is that they go back to what they know, because the unknown is terrifying. Mm-hmm. And they don't trust. They don't know true love. And even if you say, I'm going to give you freedom to someone who doesn't know what to do with it is tyranny. And we as the church, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. We are called to create a community, to reach out and say, this is what freedom looks like. This is what true love looks like. We come to them with an empathetic compassion, and we come with authenticity. And I think we as Christians, we might say, well, I can't compare myself to like what they've gone through, like a wound that I have. I can't connect with them. But I think if you just realize and you let God heal your deep wound, you realize that the same God that you met and encountered is the same God that they need to know. And you can connect in that way. And that's part of what the church needs to do, engage. And so one of the things we also do is give churches the ability to host community outreaches. And we basically bring in a person and like a community ambassador. They give a presentation. We ask the churches to bring in people, and they present the material that is necessary for the community to know. And we've actually had a great success story where a parent came up to us and was like, hey, everything that you're saying is like what's going on with my daughter. And we were able actually to interdict a situation, and the daughter who was being groomed and in a very bad situation was saved. And she actually went on to become one of our student leaders in our student advisory group, because we have students that empower them to be the leaders in this space too. So yeah,
That's great. Okay, so a church would look up your organization. I'm just trying to figure out if there are any pastors or even church leaders, and that you don't have to be on the payroll to be considered a leader. I know plenty of leaders in churches that don't make a dime, and this is just your passion. It's a volunteer thing. If they're listening, they would have to go to your website.
The website that I would suggest that they go to is actually the Safe House Project. So they actually have, it's called God's Heart to Eradicating Human Trafficking. And I can, I'll send you the link
Yes.
and provide you with that. But what it is, it provides you with, it mobilizes the church to serve the least of these, or love our neighbors, and seek justice in an unjust world. It's a training that you go to, and you basically bring it into the church and have small groups. We also have youth curriculum of like what we call the Just Ask curriculum, which is prevention. And we offer that as, it's called Know the Truth. And it's a Christian based kind of curriculum that really starts with, if you know the truth, you can recognize the lie, right? Like if you touch real money, you can always spot a counterfeit. So really teach kids what love looks like. And so, we have a curriculum for kids. We have curriculum for men that are struggling with pornography. We have parent curriculum to give them resources. The Parent Coalition has built a handbook to help parents who are like going things and saying like, how do I navigate this? So we have a lot of that we can offer. But the Safe House Project really is where I would direct people to, where it's prevention, survivor, they have online little like things you can go through to really recognize the signs, the symptoms, everything. So you know how to, recognize, report, and move on from that.
Wow. Okay. So that is very thorough, which is good, because we need that. We need instructions and that. And then it's almost like, well, where do we start if you really want to do this? And it would be wonderful if 50% even 50% of the churches, doesn't have to be 100%, would start these projects to get on board with everything. Okay. So back in August, when I heard you speak, you were talking about getting the men before they get too deep into pornography, to stop that. So can you tell us about that?
About stopping men before they get into pornography?
Yes. Did you mention that? It's like, because that's where you see that it's important.
Yeah. It's called pastors preaching about it. It's called calling them out. It's called about having ministries where men who have that temptation and lust are able to get the support that they need. I can't necessarily speak to that entirely because I don't know fully, but I will say that that's the church's role. And there are churches that do have pornography and men's groups that do that and address it as a real issue and a real struggle. And that is the church's role. The world considers sex, we also say accessibility, suggestibility, vulnerability. The suggestibility in our culture right now is sex is recreational, right? It's not sacred. It's common. What they say in the trafficking world is, hey, if you can have sex for free, why not have sex for a fee? So, the culture is not going to teach our men to abstain from pornography, and that progresses on to fulfilling that dopamine release with like the heroin, thing to fulfill it with a person. So I really think it's our church. We are absent. And that I hate to say it, but like this is a spiritual issue, and our church is absent. And our church is absent in policy making. And that's, really hard to consider. But we had actually a bill that we were trying to pass with Congress, and one congressman was holding it up. And we were just like, we'll adapt the bill. We'll try and do everything to work with you. But he just held it up. And it was a pastor that called him from his community and said, hey, you need to pass it. And it changed that congressman, and the bill got passed. The church can make a difference.
What? That's wonderful. Yeah. But most pastors, was this up in the Northern Virginia area? Or where was it?
It was not the Northern Virginia area. I'm not too sure exactly which congressman it was. This was a few years back. But
most pastors aren't even aware of what goes on in the political realm, and they don't want to know. And that's where I find that's just, to me, it's a travesty, because they need to know what is happening in the world and what's happening in the political arena, because we have been blessed to live in a country where we can voice and bring our beliefs into that arena. Other countries don't have that.
Right.
And because we're a nation that was founded on Christian principles, no matter what anyone says, the facts are there.
Right.
The absolute facts are there that the founding fathers realized they had to turn to God and pray. And even the weakest ones of them all in that area, they were right there telling people we need to do this. So that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I really hope that more pastors will start to step up in this way.
Yeah. And I will say that, we think there's the separation of church and state, but in this case, politics is downstream from culture, and the root of culture is cult, which is religion. And if we as a church don't help change the hearts and minds of people, then what do we expect? And if we're not involved in politics and policy making, which is that idea, involved in the political process means, God raises up and removes leaders according to his purposes, but that involves us. It involves our engagement. And if we are absent in that, we can't complain. Our culture is the way it is. Our politics are the way they are. Our leaders are the way they are because we're not engaged. And, this past election, from what I understand, we have so many that are eligible to vote, but only 20% of the Christians turned out to vote.
Even this year? Really?
I think that, it's more than we ever had. I might be mistaken, but maybe more than that. I might have heard a statistic incorrectly, so I could be wrong. I probably am wrong. But more.
No, well, I know it has been that in the past, but I know that's why they were really targeting
the church,
Christians to get out there and to stop this nonsense, with, oh, well, there was a mean tweet, and oh, he's a felon. Well, you know what? He's the only person I've ever seen in a presidential election continually give thanks to God, continually praise Jesus, continually, not just one time, but and mean it. I was told that at some of those rallies, those Trump rallies, that people would end up singing praise and worship songs while they were waiting for him, that it would just break out Amazing Grace and so many others. That, to me, it's like, that is unprecedented. When has that happened before?
And I will tell you that I believe that this election was won because the church rose up, because the church prayed, because the church got involved 110%. And I totally think I'm mistaken on the 20%. Maybe 20% didn't show up. I think that might have been the statistic or something.
No, I think you're right, but it was the 20% in the past. I don't know this election, but we still didn't have 100% of Christians, because they think, I don't want to get involved. Well, then this is the world we live in.
Exactly.
Where little kids are taught that they may not be the gender that they think they are. That, and I've said it before to my audiences, it's schizophrenia. You're teaching a child who doesn't even know, how to read and write, that they could be anything they want. They could be a dog if they want. If they think they're a dog, you're a dog, or an elephant. And then I think back to listening to Elon Musk in an interview a while back, and he said, yeah, people can we can turn people into a butterfly if they want, because of the science that we have now to change the genome, the human genome. And so it's like, are you nuts? It's like the world has gone crazy.
Yeah.
The enemy has just taken such a stronghold. It's like you said, the churches are afraid to offend anyone.
Yeah.
And so, it's hard. It makes it hard.
Yeah.
So what pitfalls can you tell us about, Ashley, and how people can become aware of what's going on around them as far as this human trafficking, so they can start picking up on things and maybe having conversations?
Yeah. So the awareness is the key word there. And really quick, going back to what you're saying, you can be anything. It's identity. Yes. And we as a church, if we want to know how to engage, we need to love them with the love of Christ, and we need to show them the true value that they are. We're the only ones who can do that. Only ones, because we know Christ. And that's what the enemy wants to strike at, is the identity, because it's intimacy with Christ that we understand who we are and encounter the Father's love. And we are the only ones who can do that. But pitfalls and what we can do. So the biggest thing that starts is awareness. What you can do is become aware. So that can mean, yes, in the church, but really, if you want to do a community little group where you bring together your friends, your family, we do a lot in schools where we have basically teachers and parents come together. Obviously, we would kind of discourage having children there at that time, but getting like parents together, like there's a time and a place where you would have children, but they need to be at the appropriate age, and that's when we introduce certain things. But what you can do is awareness. Become aware. It always starts with awareness. And when you're aware, then it leads to, action and what you can do. You can become, we say with preventing human trafficking. So in order to stop human trafficking before it starts, we do prevention awareness, education, and training. But that awareness is, recognizing, reporting, and honestly, one of the things I always would like to say is, like, if you do see something and you suspect it, do not be afraid to call. Also, do not risk your life. Do not get involved. Do not try to intervene, because it is a dangerous situation. But there, and I'll provide you with resources of those, that you can call National Center for Missing Children, NCMEC, and things like that, exploited children, I'm sorry, and other things that you can call local. If you call your police off, if you're calling your police department, really ask for the Human Trafficking Task Force. A lot of times our police are not able to identify these trafficked individuals as being victims. The keyword, the prostitution, is a big thing, where they're seeing them in that they want this, but in all actuality, they're forced to do this. So there are a couple of things, like we have a DEAR is one thing. So if you want to kind of be aware, we do dress, energy, age, and relationship. So if you are trying to be aware and trying to say, hey, do I recognize it? And when do I report? You look at the dress. Does it look normal that they're, what time of day it is? If it's early in the morning and, it's a normal day, are they wearing sweats? Is their hair made up? Do they have makeup on? Their energy level. If it's morning, are they awake? Are they really tired? What kind of energy level? And at that age, if they're 10 years old, they should be energetic, right? But if they're like sluggish and they just don't seem to have the right energy for their age, and appropriate age. So like, are they acting their age? Do they seem to be, and it kind of all stems with relationship. So all in relationship to the person they're with. Are they interacting as age appropriate with the person that they're with? If they're dressed in sweats, but the person is dressed to the nines, if they have, all really rich baggage, but these kids have backpacks that are just really, old and trashy, that's it. That's a sign. Do they fear the person that they're with? Do they seem controlling? If nowadays everybody has a phone, do they have their own identification? Do they have a cell phone? Are they looking down? Just how are they interacting with that person? Those are things that you definitely look at. And if you feel any suspicion, do not be afraid to call that hotline, because you might never see anything, but people are collecting information and they can use that information to do something. So those are some things that you can be doing. But honestly, the biggest thing is really awareness, and it all starts there. So I would say hosting community events is the biggest thing. Get somebody, and we have people who will come out and speak and bring awareness. And from there, they'll help you engage, and they'll help you saying, okay, this is the next step of education. And then you just progressively get to know. And we have ways of volunteering, but awareness is the key.
Okay. Now, are you regional or are you national?
So the Safe House Project is national. We currently, with the Wolf Group, are regional, but obviously we connect people to the right places that are national.
Okay. These groups, having small groups in your home, is this something that people can learn about from the Safe House Project?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, while you were talking, I was thinking that this would be a good thing for youth, not the details, like, what you just said, some things just really shouldn't be talked about. We don't need to put things in young children's heads that shouldn't be there. They're growing, and they just need to enjoy life and meet the challenges that come with growing up normally. But I would see this something for youth groups.
Yep.
Maybe is there training for that? When I say youth, I mean children in middle school, high school, not with all the graphic stuff, but so that they can help their friends in school, or if they're being driven from one place to another and they see a child on the side of the road, kind of things to look for and become aware.
Yeah. So we have that. We have the curriculum for churches to implement with, youth group classes, or if they wanted to do it for the whole youth group, if they wanted to have a ministry class just for youth, we have that curriculum that's Christian based. And it goes through just the Bible and understanding God's love, but it also is very practical in teaching them what to look for, what to be aware of, what is dangerous, how to help each other, empowering them to be the defenders, to be the protectors, and saying, you have the strength to do something too. So we absolutely have that, just particularly towards youth, and resources just for them. I should mention that the other piece that we really need help with is these kids need what we call the 3 T's, 3 trusted adults. If you can be available to be a trusted adult for a child, that is critical. Because if you know a child's baseline, if there's a blip, you can tell it. And that's one key thing. No one's keeping watch over our kids, really. And so they're not recognizing, if you know a healthy person, that's what prevention is, right? Prevention medicine is like, I know a healthy person. So when they're not healthy. That's what we need with the church is we need mentors. If there's not a father in the home, we need men to rise up and step in. But those 3 trusted adults are critical for these kids, so they are able to talk. And the other thing you can do as a parent is communication, open communication, talk about everything. And I would encourage you that when things come up, obviously there is the reaction, but don't react. Talk it out. Hear them. Let everything that is going on in their world be something you communicate. When they know that they can communicate with anything with you, and they're open and dialoguing with you, that means that you are talking with them about it and not the world. That is the critical piece, I think. And for me personally, if I did not have communication with my dad. I did not have communication with my mom. The communication lines were shut down. They were phenomenal parents, absolutely phenomenal. My dad became a pastor and superintendent at my school, best dad ever. But there was no communication, and that's how things happened. So communication with your kids, open dialogue about every issue. It might be hard for you to talk about it, but if you're talking about it, they're safer.
Yeah, they are safer. And sometimes parents in our day and age just get very busy.
Mm-hmm.
And you see your child and you think they're fine. Middle school, walking around a little sullen. Oh, that's normal. Middle school is rough. It's that preteen difficulties. Just everything is strange because we're changing. Everything's changing. So it's easy to blow things off.
Mm-hmm.
Just thinking they're fine. They're living under my roof. They're home. They're eating right or not eating right, but it's just a phase.
Mm-hmm.
And before you know it, the spiral begins. So, and that goes with all kinds of things, with illnesses. I witnessed it with an illness that I really wasn't aware of. And anyway, so yeah, I think communication is key to learning what's going on and getting involved in your church community. Maybe you can start one of these groups or talk with your youth pastor and do something together. Don't expect them to do it all. You do some of the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And get busy and sign up for these things, get trained. This is great, Ashley. Do you have any other last words or things that we need to know about that will help people not only get involved, but just kind of realize that how much we really need all of this?
I think it's just remembering that these are God's children. They're closest to his heart. Remembering that it's not happening to the typical low socioeconomic class. It's happening to our kids, middle class. And that we as a church have an obligation to get involved. It is our calling. We have the freedom. We have the love. We know how to value. And it's our call to get involved in politics. It's our call to get involved with our kids. These are the next generation. And if we don't get involved, we will lose them. And if I could just read something that really is kind of convicting and what really hit home for me. Current events must be defined using God's truth. Demonic visuals and messages must be forbidden and resisted. We must be a people who discern the times. Thomas Aquinas, a 13th century Italian priest, philosopher, and theologian, made this statement. He who is not angry when there is just cause for anger is immoral. Why? Because anger looks to the good of justice. And if you can live amid injustice without anger, you are immoral as well as unjust. It's possible to be angry and sin not. Ephesians 4:26. Anger, however, at injustice is righteous anger. It is not love to wink at injustice. It is love to resist it. We are in a spiritual and ideological war for this nation, for our kids. Ours is a call to spiritual warfare, and it is a call to cultural battles. It is an ideological war against unrighteous government and societal tyranny. It's a call to speak truth to abusive, lying powers. The call to the church, the ecclesia, is to arise and stand against evil. The weapons of God that God gave us are mighty through him to the pulling down of strongholds. We are called to partner with him and stop corruption. It is time to cast off fear, apathy, indifference, laziness, and stand against injustice.
Amen. Yes, it is. And I know it's not the popular thing to do, especially when it comes to this gender dysphoria, the fluidity that's being pushed on everyone, and we're supposed to act like that's normal. Yeah, we need to stand up against it. I think that it's completely evil if we remain silent and think my kids are going to be okay, but who cares about everyone else's kids?
Right.
That's the kind of atmosphere I was in when my children were going to a very perverse so-called Christian school for many, many years. But anyway, well, we find ourselves in situations because that's where God puts us. And we need to speak up, not just be quiet about it. Oh, if I say something, I might lose my country club membership. Say that to God, because he's gonna ask you about it in the end.
Yeah.
Oh, Ashley, thank you so much. I know you're a busy woman, and I just so much appreciate. I'm so glad that we met.
Yes.
And I pray over your this group that they continue to bless people. Can you tell us, just it popped into my head, it doesn't really matter, but are there active groups across the nation with this project, the Safe House Project?
Yeah, well, they're situated in North Carolina, and but it is a national reach that they have. So yeah, they're regional. They have directors on the West Coast. They have it in the Midwest. So they're all over the country. They have their home base is North Carolina, but they have sent out regional directors that are creating hubs of their work.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, learning how to write policy is an art, and it's a huge deal.
Yes.
I know that there are a couple other organizations that I know about doing that, but not specifically geared toward stopping all of the child abuse happening in our culture today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. I want to wish you the best. Wonderful Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to you. And it's such a pleasure being here. Thank you. And thank you to your audience. And if I can just say one last thing,
Yes.
I know that this is a big issue, but it is not greater than our God. And God has called us to bring air weapons to a ground war. We're not going to win this battle in a ground war. Goliath was not sent to defeat David, but to reveal him. And we need to realize that this is not overwhelming in a sense like it is to our minds, but we bring the spiritual weapons to defeat this. And so our focus is not combating, but to eradicate it. And we do believe that that is going to happen. So be encouraged. Know that God is in control, and that we, every individual, can make a difference in this space. So thank you so much, Catherine.
That's awesome. And please, everybody, I put the way to reach Ashley if you want to get involved in the banner below, and I will also have it in the show notes. Is there any other places where people can follow you, Ashley, that you would like them to know about? Like the policies, do you all like advertise the policies that you're working on anywhere that people can go talk to their own congressman about something that they may not even be aware that's in the works?
I can, if people contact me, I can definitely direct them to that.
Okay.
Visit our website. It is the Wolf Group Strategy Solutions. They will see the work that we're doing and the policies, and they'll be able to read the articles which actually identify the policies, the work, the efforts that we have done, and the accomplishments that we have achieved.
Okay. All right. I'm going to ask you to send me that link too, so I can put it in the notes and people can look that up as well. Because I think more and more people are getting active, and I'm really happy to see that.
Very, grateful and appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you again.
Thank you.